Thing to note is that any questions that are asked, please do make sure you ask your question in a way that I'm able to understand. Appreciate, something might come up and you might think, oh, let me just type that quickly. And I get that, definitely do so. But before you hit send, please make sure you've had a quick read, because the last thing that I want is for you to ask a question that's really good or would have been really good, but I can't understand what you're meaning by the question because you've kind of rushed it out. So just have a quick read, make sure I'm going to know what you're talking about. And that way I'll be able to answer any questions you have in as much detail as I possibly can. I'm going to run through a short presentation with you guys. But the main thing isn't going to be focusing on the presentation. I'm just going to be using this as more of a sort of a prompt to dive into what I want to discuss with you all today. Ideally, you should all be going away with several actionable tips that you can say, right, I'm going to do these right now. And that's going to lead to me landing more interviews. So that's what we're aiming for here. It's not just, okay, let me listen to this. Okay, wow, he said some interesting things and then nothing happens. The only reason I jump on these sessions, sit here for 2 hours and go through this with you guys is because it works. And I receive so many messages afterwards of people who have actioned things that have been said, who have landed jobs in such short time frames, and not always short time frames. It doesn't happen for everyone and it doesn't need to. Not everyone's looking for a job instantly. But it ultimately, getting better results is the only reason we're doing this. So, and it's the only reason you guys are here as well, right? So let's make it as valuable as we possibly can. So, just before I dive in, um, when it comes to landing a job, we have just come out of the summer slowdown. Now, it's not to say that during that summer slowdown that it wasn't possible to land roles over here, because it definitely was, and loads of people were landing interviews and they were getting offers and everything was going fine, and that's great. But what we're going to see now is the market changing, and I've seen it very aggressively over the past perhaps week or so, where we've had God knows how many companies reaching out to us and saying, hey, look, have you got anyone that you can send us across for X, Y, and Z? We've got a director role for this. We've got an ops role here. We've got a finance role here. Who have you got that you can send us across? Send us across all the best people that you know. And I've been getting tons of these messages to the point where we're having to ignore people that are reaching out because we just simply can't respond to all of the requests. And that is a huge indication of how the market is doing, right? If companies are spending time to reach out to me and reach out to us, that means if you reach out to them before they reach out to us, you will have like the first dibs, right? You'll be able to get your foot in the door straight away. So these organizations and organizations in the region and people in the region are, the market is very active at the moment. So it's a very, very good time to, if you haven't been aggressively searching, now is a good time to double down. Now, we are going to be putting our foot into Q4 very soon. And Q4 is going to be a sort of very busy period. So busy periods do have pros and cons. And I will probably touch on that at some point. And if you want to ask any questions about, how to navigate the market when it's high versus how to navigate the market when it's low and whatnot, you're more than welcome to do so. And I will dive in and answer. But I have discussed this before, so I won't go into it in too much detail just now. So the way that I'm going to go through this is we've separated this into three categories: prep, CV, LinkedIn. These are three critical tools that you have or you should be using in order to advance your search and secure your next role in this part of the world. And frankly speaking, anywhere, right? These are your tools and you must be using them. So, firstly, before you apply, and this is a mistake that I see very frequently made, it's kind of running your search backwards. So you're starting, right? Everyone, the only reason people are applying to jobs and running a job search is because of the end goal. They want to land a job, right? If you're not attending this session because you love the sound of my voice as much as I'd like to flatter myself, that's not why you're here. You're attending this session because you want to get from here, which is applying for jobs, not getting any interviews, or you've not yet started applying, but you want to get from here to here, which is not where you are now, and landing a job. And that's the sole purpose that you're attending this call for the vast majority anyway. And it's absolutely critical that instead of starting here and hoping to get to here in a shorter time frame possible, because that's not how it works. You need to be starting here. So you need to start at the start, right? And you need to do the things that should be done at the start of the search before you start going into more advanced or more latter parts of the search, which will lead to you getting interviews. If you It's like the old saying goes, if you fail to prepare, then you're preparing to fail. It is, that runs very true. And firstly, what I mean here by map out the companies you want to work for is you should have a list of organizations you want to target. And then you should know which people within these organizations would have the ability to advance your search. So, what I mean by that is, you know, you should pick out organizations not only that you like the look of. So everyone would say, "Oh yeah, I like Google or Amazon or so and so," right? Yeah, everyone knows these organizations, but you should be highlighting organizations that not only are good, but would also have an appetite for a profile like yours, would be able to support a profile like yours. For example, if you're in charge of, typically leading projects that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars and whatnot, applying to a very small startup probably isn't the right fit. It might be if you want to make a shift into that space, but typically you want to apply for organizations that will be able to utilize your skill set and pay you well enough to warrant you accepting a position with them. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. With that being said, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself on one particular type of organization. One issue or one error that I see made by many expats is what they will do is they'll essentially target all of the same companies that everyone else is targeting. So they'll be applying from the UK, or they'll be applying from Canada, or they'll be applying from Australia, or wherever it might be. And the companies they're targeting are the same companies everyone there is targeting, because it's the companies that absolutely everyone knows. They're targeting your HSBCs, they're targeting your Amazons, they're targeting your Googles, they're targeting your Microsofts, the companies that everyone knows. And if you're targeting the same companies as absolutely everyone else, yes, I understand why you would target them, but they're going to be hyper saturated, which means that the rules on what's going to work and what isn't going to work are going to be very, very stringent. They're going to be very stringent, meaning, if you're applying to Amazon, you've got 1,500 profiles, the vast majority are going to be automatically rejected, blanketly. And it's going to be a very small selection that are getting through. Whereas if you're targeting perhaps more national niche organizations that are known by people in the region, like, for example, people in Dubai, people in Abu Dhabi that know of these organizations, or Riyadh, or wherever it might be that you're applying, yes, they're still going to have a fair few applicants. There's still going to be, several hundred people applying, but it's not going to be, God knows how many 1,500, 2,000 people clicking apply. So you're competing in a smaller pool, which there's an element of, or a lesser element of automation and blanket flat out rejection. So you need to target a variety of organizations. Target them MNCs that everyone knows and loves. Target them international companies. Target them huge pioneer names. But also keep an eye on the smaller players. One of the best companies at the moment for hiring, if I was applying to jobs at the moment, one of the first companies I would target would be Property Finder. And yes, they are, an international organization, but they're not an Amazon, they're not a Google and whatnot. Property Finder at the moment is hiring so frequently. They've got such a great hiring process, such a fantastic reputation on the market. It's a sort of pleasant experience for everyone who's going through it right now with Property Finder. Like it's sort of a company that's growing in the region and whatnot. Similarly, Revolut is hiring quite a lot at the moment. So these organizations, whilst yes, they're not national companies, but they've got a sort of growing presence in the region, and they're not sort of an Amazon or a Google, as I say. So you want to keep an eye on these organizations. And then, of course, you've got your G42s, you've got your AD Ports and stuff like this, Dubai holding companies that are very well known in the region, but they're not going to be the first thing that comes to mind for international applicants. Now, this is something that really grinds my gears. This is a topic, and I'm going to touch on two things with this. Um, Knowing what salary you're looking for is absolutely critical. And you probably do know what salary you're looking for, but it needs to be cemented. It needs to be set in stone. You need to know for certain what that looks like for you. So, what I mean by that is, I'll sometimes have people who will reach out to me and say, "Hey, look, I'm looking for a job. I want help with X, Y, and Z." And I'll say something to the tune of, "Okay, no problem at all." And I speak to so many recruiters, by the way, who have a huge issue with this. And I'll say, "So, what sort of salary are you looking for?" Well, I don't know, right? You tell me what you know about the region. What do you think I'm worth? What sort of, or they'll say, "Well, I'm flexible," or "I'm willing to negotiate," or "I'm not really too sure." But you're applying for a job, you're applying for these positions when the moment you come across as if you haven't done your research, you haven't even got to the point where you've decided, okay, this is the type of salary I'm looking for, you run a very real risk, or it's borderline a certainty, that you're going to come across as if you're potentially unprepared. You're just really kind of dipping a toe into the market. You're not really putting both feet into this search. And if you're not serious, why should a company be serious about speaking with you? You need to ensure that you are able to say, right, I'm looking for between X and X. And by the way, that is the best way to handle any salary discussion, hands down. You'll see, and I'm doing a video on this at the moment. You see it on Instagram and TikTok. And I might do a brief post on it on LinkedIn as well, just to really drum it in, because this is a huge issue that's going on at the moment. There are so many videos circulating that kind of push the idea of, when a recruiter asks you what sort of salary are you looking for, or you're in an interview or at late stages with a company or whatever it might be, and they say to you, what sort of salary are you looking for, or what are your salary expectations? You'll have this idea being pushed around that you should be saying, oh, what's your budget? Or you should be doing anything that you can to evade the question. Right. And many of you would have heard this. If you have heard this, let me know, because I want to know how widespread this is. Because when I'm scrolling through stuff, this is all I seem to see. I don't know if I'm being wound up by the algorithm and whatnot, but it seems like that's all I'm seeing, where this misinformed advice is being given out to withhold information that you're being asked for. So, if a recruiter, and bear in mind, I have these discussions with hundreds of recruiters, and get sort of their opinions and their on the ground feedback on stuff like this. And if a recruiter or a talent acquisition professional or someone in HR, or potentially even a hiring manager, if they were to ask you, what are your salary expectations? And you were to just ignore the question and then say, well, what's your budget? It is essentially saying, well, I'm not going to answer your question. It's almost as if you're trying to take some sort of power play with it, right? You're trying to take control of the conversation. And with recruiters, they are not going to sort of just allow that to take place. And what will typically happen, because this is a saturated market, right? When we're in a saturated market, that means that recruiters and hiring teams are typically willing to immediately skip past anyone's profile who isn't working with them well, who isn't easy to work with. So, what I mean by that is, let's say I was recruiting in Mexico. I'm a executive search recruiter in Mexico, in a small location in Mexico. Right, and I'm going somewhere with this. So I'm an executive search recruiter for a small company in a city in Mexico, and I am looking for a CFO with Big Four experience. So they have to have worked at PwC, EY, KPMG, or Deloitte. Now, I am not going to throw people away, because my talent pool is going to be very small. Right, there's probably maybe 20 people in the country that I can speak to. Maybe if I went global with it, I'd maybe have 100 people applying to a role, or maybe 20 of them would be relevant. I wouldn't have loads of people that I could speak to, that I could, engage with. In the UAE, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Riyadh, in Doha, these recruiters and hiring teams, even if you're exec grade and you're searching for a CXO role and you're searching for a SVP, VP, whatever we want to call it, you're searching for a senior role, manager grade, whatever it might be, you're searching for these roles. These recruiters and hiring teams and talent acquisition teams have, and I'm not joking, thousands of people lined up waiting to speak to them. So the moment they ask you, what's your salary expectations? And you try and make a power play with it and say, well, what's your budget? They're going to say, all right, thank you. Cheers. On to the next one. Because there's people there that will give them the answers they're looking for. If that's not you, that's fine. They'll move on. Whenever you're asked this question, what salary are you looking for? Give a range. And I've said this many times and say it again because of how important it is. Give a range. The range that you provide doesn't have to be a tiny range. It doesn't have to be between 27 and 28K. It doesn't have to be like that. You could even go as far as between 25 and 35K. Between, as you start going higher in the ranks and you're looking for, 60, 70, 80K, you can literally say, I'm looking for between 60 to 100K. Or you could say, I'm looking for anything over 100K. Or you could say anything to that tune. It doesn't have to be a very small margin, but it does have to be a figure. It does have to be a figure. And sometimes, especially if you're speaking to talent acquisition teams and they're screening you, if they ask you what your salary expectations are and you don't give them your salary expectations, they are essentially unable to enter in that information in a box that they have to fill out as part of their job. So, like, if you're following me here, if they don't have this information, they can't fill it out. Undisclosed isn't an option. They can't fill it out and they have to reject your application. So you need to give a sort of salary range. Now, decide where it is you want to work. And this is talking about location. So what you'll find, and this is pretty common, and some of you will sort of say, oh, do you know what? That actually sounds like me. I often have people reaching out and they say, hey, Zach, I'm looking for a job anywhere in the MENA region. Like, that sounds a bit mental, right? All right. So what are we talking? Algeria? Are we talking like Tunisia? Are we talking Dubai? Are we talking Doha? Are we talking, Manama? Are we talking, what are we talking here? MENA is, this isn't something that you can go with, all right, Egypt. Where are you looking? If you say this and you go too broad, even if you were to say anywhere in the GCC, unless you'd had like 25 years of experience in the GCC, or you were well embedded into the GCC, or you've grown up here, or you've lived here for a while, it's going to sound like you don't really care, or you're just saying something just to say it. Because for me, if I was looking for a job, me personally, I wouldn't apply in Kuwait, nor would I apply in Bahrain. I'd apply in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. They're probably the two Emirates I would target. Maybe RAK, maybe. I would target Riyadh, maybe Jeddah as well in Saudi, and maybe Doha. They're the locations that me personally I would target. Some people might say, well, I want to target Kuwait City. I want to target Bahrain. I want to target these organizations or these locations. Sorry, and that is completely fine. But to say, oh, I'm willing to just throw me anywhere, I don't care. It's not, which is essentially what you're saying, right? Just throw me anywhere. If you say I want anywhere in the GCC, it's not anywhere in the GCC, is it? Like it's not. Like you should have a bit more sort of care, because someone who wants to live in Dubai and their reasoning for wanting to live in Dubai is going to be different from someone who wants to live in Doha, for example, or someone who wants to live in Sharjah. So have an idea. And it's not to say that you can't have multiple locations that you want to target. It's not to say you can't say, look, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Riyadh, and Jeddah. It's not to say that you can't do that. You can, absolutely. But you can't just say, oh, anywhere in the MENA region, because it is going to make you look as if you are potentially careless. And it is quite common. So hopefully that mistake will not be made again. Clearly outline the value you're able to add. And for anyone who's joined late, we're talking about prep work here. right? We're talking about before you apply for a single job, this is the stuff that you need to be doing. So clearly outline the value you're able to add to not only an organization, this is where people go wrong, not only to an organization, but to the hiring teams and the individuals that you're going to be speaking to as well, right? So not just the organizations, but the hiring teams too, and the recruiters and the whatnot. For example, let's say you work in a very specialist field in oil and gas, and you're very senior, and it's really difficult to find profiles like yours. The value that you could add to a recruitment professional or a talent acquisition team or a hiring manager or decision maker or whoever's going to be responsible for this hire is saving them god knows how much time looking for your profile, right? That's the value you're going to add. Yes, you're going to add value to the organization as well. At that point, you'll be very aware of the value and the commercials and whatnot that you're going to add to this company. But more so, adding value to a company isn't necessarily going to get you interviews. Yeah, it might get you the job once you've got the interview, but it's adding value to people that's going to get you to the point where you get an interview, because people are going to be interviewing you. It's not the company that's going to be interviewing you. And at the point where you're getting an interview, it's you being likable, it's you adding value, it's you being readily available. That is what's going to lead to you landing interviews. So you need to clearly outline the value you're able to add in, even sit down, right? Sit down, grab a pen out, grab a pad out, and say, what benefit do I give to people? And not, oh, wow, I can increase the X, Y, and Z by X, Y, and Z. Not that. I'm talking about what hard value, immediate value does someone get from speaking to you? What immediate value does someone get from interviewing you? What is that going to save them? Is it going to save the company from making a poor hire, which is going to cost them millions? What immediate value can you give to someone? Now, track absolutely everything. This is really important. And what I sometimes see, and it can be quite funny to see, but not funny at the same time, because it often means that several months have been potentially wasted. But you will have, or I will have people reach out and they'll say, "Hey, Zach, look, I've applied for, 500 roles and I've not landed a single interview." And upon them actually having a look, after I tell them, "All right, tell me how many roles you've actually applied for. I want you to go here and check," and tell them how to check. And then they'll say, "Well, oh, actually, I thought I'd applied for like 500 roles. It's actually saying I've applied for 71." Now, whilst yes, 71 applying for 71 jobs and not landing an interview is still pretty crazy, right? That's not good, and something is obviously wrong. It's not 500. It's not 500. And there's a big difference between 71 and 500. If you've applied for 500 roles and you've not landed any interviews, something is seriously wrong, and it has been going wrong, and it likely requires some sort of serious intervention. If you've applied for 71, it could be a case where you might not have applied for the right roles. You might have just been a little bit misaligned, and you could be kind of pushed back before it gets too bad. So, tracking how many jobs you've applied for, where you've applied for, have you been following up, tracking your action, is very important, because we're all, well, maybe not myself, because this is what I do, but everyone in this call, unless you're a recruiter, and even then, you are essentially a junior. You could be a CXO with 30 years of experience. You are a junior at looking for a job. You are not an expert. You're not a professional job seeker. You are a professional at what you do, but you are not a professional job seeker. And the closest people to being able to find a job effectively are, are just on their own accord, are typically salespeople or recruiters, because they typically know how to sell themselves. But that's only half the battle. So, you're not a professional job seeker. So you need to track things, and you need to treat yourself somewhat as a junior, right? You need to keep a track over all of your actions, because then, if you track things and you see, oh, actually, you know what? I've sent out 30 applications for finance companies or banks or whatever. I've sent out 30 applications to construction companies, whatever it might be. And I've not landed a single interview. And for 25 of them, I received a instant rejection email within an hour after clicking apply. So what happens then is now you're able to assess and say, okay, well, I've received these automated rejection emails. This means that something's wrong with my CV. I'm getting automatically rejected. So that gives you what you need to now make a change and move yourself in the right direction. I do see the questions in the chat, by the way. Keep asking your questions. Once I've finished do you know what I'll do? Once I have finished each section, I'll run through the questions quickly, just so we don't have a huge bulk of questions at the end that I can't get to. So I'll run through some of these questions right now, and then I'll answer more at the end. So let's see. So yeah, people do seem to be saying that they do get stuck at that bit where you're asked about your salary expectations. So we're just about to go on to the CV one, by the way. So that's why I am answering these now. Let's see. Is it hard to land a job in Abu Dhabi as a fresher and a foreigner? I'm not located in the UAE, and it's really hard to land even an interview. Now, you're applying for data analyst roles and still no interview. So this is interesting, right? Genuinely, you're going to have it quite difficult. Not to say that you can't do it, you definitely can, but it is going to be difficult. For any senior people in this call, anyone who's 20 years into their career and whatnot, it is easier for you to land a job than it is for someone who is just out of uni or looking for their first position. It is so difficult to land a job in the GCC or the UAE and KSA as someone who doesn't have some sort of baseline of experience. And it is quite difficult across the world unless you've sort of got your foot into some sort of grad role or something like that. It's very difficult, and it's difficult because you've not got any value to add at this point, or there's no sort of value you can add to the company. If anything, you're going to be a hindrance, right? Because they're going to have to train you, they're going to have to invest in you and put all of that time in. What you want to do when you're trying to add value as someone without much experience or little to no experience, you need to try your best to ensure whoever you're reaching out to that you will not be a hindrance. You will do anything that is required. You will do whatever it takes to make it work. And you're not going to be sort of, one of the biggest mistakes that people who are early stage career make is they will say, oh, yeah, I don't have any experience, but I'm willing to learn. Saying you're willing to learn is, you're not enrolling for a course or some sort of university program. So they're not there. They're not there as your educator. You want to make it seem as if you're not going to need to learn. You already understand. Even if it's a baseline understanding, you need to make it look as if you are hot and you are sort of on top of it instantly. You need to come across as a sponge. You need to come across as someone who can absorb things in a heartbeat. That is absolutely critical. When asked about your salary, can you start by giving them your last salary before giving out the salary range? Yes. Yeah, that's not a problem. As long as your previous salary or your current salary isn't miles off what you're asking for. If they say, oh, what sort of salary are you targeting? And you go, oh, well, currently I'm on 15 and I'm looking for 65, it's not going to go down well, right? You've got no chance. But if you were to say, hey, look, I'm currently receiving 15. I'm currently looking for anything between 18 and 22. And then you just go quiet. That'll be fine. Anything like 20%, 25% increase from what you're currently receiving typically is completely fine. And it's pretty much industry standard. So telling them what you're receiving previously, that's not bad at all. But only do it if it's somewhat aligned with what you're looking for. Nice. Let's have a look here. I'll answer one more question before I dive in to the next point. Do headhunters still actively search? Absolutely, 100%. They do indeed. So with recruiters and hiring teams as a whole, so talent acquisition teams, whoever it might be, they are typically going to try and source talent directly So they're going to try and source talent directly before going to, oh, before going to say, right, let's list the job and let's just go through the applicants. They're going to prefer to go and headhunt people directly, as long as we're talking about semi-senior roles. They're not going to go out and think, right, let's headhunt people directly if you're looking for 1 year worth of experience. But if you're looking for people, if recruiters are looking for people with 3, 4, 5+ years of experience, and especially once we start going manager grade, senior manager grade, AD, director, all of that business, they are 100% headhunting. Recruiters headhunt, that is their primary method of sourcing talent. So yes, 100% they are indeed. Right, let's see. So making a CV that works. Apologies for that. The PowerPoint is a little bit buggered. So making a CV that works. So I did see a couple of people asking in the chat about this. Use the right location. This is something that I get a lot of pushback on. I get a lot of, I actually get quite a few angry messages because of this, in fairness. And people saying, how can you say that? That's lying. Oh, isn't that deceiving someone? Isn't that, X, Y, and Z? And we can call it what we want, but it is. Do you know what? There's a really good question in the chat. I'm going to answer it because of how important it is and how good of a question it is. And I've never been asked this question before, and I really, really like it. The gentleman has asked, do recruiters headhunt outside of LinkedIn? I love that question. I like the question so much that I'm going to divert away from what I'm talking about now, just to answer that quickly, and then I'm going to go back. So recruiters do not headhunt outside of LinkedIn anymore. They will not. Recruitment companies are pretty much 100% leveraged on LinkedIn as a platform. It's so good that it doesn't make sense for them to do anything outside of it. Gone are the days of, someone in a trench coat standing outside, HSBC trying to swoop up execs when they come out the office and pull them into a bar or something like that. That's not how recruitment works anymore. Recruitment and talent acquisition is near enough 100% digitalized. It's all done via social media. No matter what roles you're applying for, no matter how senior you are, no matter how which field you're in, it is all done digitally because it's faster. Anyone who's not doing it like that is playing a slow, drawn out, ineffective game, and they will be left behind. The world is digitalized, right? It is. Companies who are not leveraging LinkedIn and not sort of, advising that their hiring teams and talent acquisition teams to be solely focusing on LinkedIn when it comes to headhunting and going out and attracting talent. I'm not talking about listing jobs. I'm talking about going out and headhunting directly, reaching out and saying, hi, we want to interview you, sort of thing. If they aren't doing that, they don't know what they're doing. It's the equivalent of a company not having a website and saying we're going to use flyers instead of something like that. So yeah. Right. So using the right location on your CV, a really good question. Thanks for asking that, by the way. So use the right location on your CV. If you are in the UK, you're in the US, you're in Canada, you're in Mexico, we'll use as another example, you're in India, you're in wherever you are, Australia, it doesn't matter where you are. If you are in any of these locations, your location on your CV must be set to where you're applying. It must be set to Dubai. It must be set to Abu Dhabi. It must be set to Riyadh. It must be set to somewhere in the GCC. If you're applying from Australia and you want a job in Dubai, or you're applying from the US and you want a job in Dubai, or you're applying from Canada, you want a job in Abu Dhabi, but your location says Canada and you apply for a job in Dubai, you're going to be instantly rejected. And you can say, oh, well, isn't that lying? Call it what you want. Doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what you call it. If you don't, you will not land interviews. You will be automatically rejected. If you're happy to spend, 24 months looking for a job, then fine. list your location as Canada and apply for jobs in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Riyadh, wherever you're applying. No problem. But expect this search to take years. It will. It will take years because pretty much all systems are going to reject these. Pretty much all systems are going to reject it. So if you're not doing that, you are essentially it would be the same as using like a PowerPoint for your CV or something. It's absolutely critical. It just breaks the process entirely. You must have that, and you must have the location that you're applying for on your CV, non-negotiable. And someone just commented, your phone number will give that game away. Correct. Yes, it will. However, if that will not get you automatically rejected, maybe someone will look at your CV and think, oh, that person's got a Canadian number. Maybe that's their old Canadian number, and maybe that's their WhatsApp number or something, and they've just included it. They didn't include their UA number, perhaps. Maybe they'll think, oh, maybe that person's in Canada. Maybe that person's X, Y, and Z, and they reject it because of that. Perhaps. Unlikely. Unlikely. And even if it is likely, so be it. But if you don't set your location as where you're applying, doesn't matter what your phone number is, it will be automatically rejected before anyone even gets a chance to look at it. So that is one of the that's essentially the crux behind it. It's automated rejection that will be caused from that. I've had loads of people in the chat asking, should you apply from Naukri Gulf and Gulf Talent and stuff like this? If you're looking for roles that are if you're applying for roles that are paying very low salaries, then yeah, potentially. But this is not something. Oh, hold on a moment. Seems like something's going on here. If you're applying for roles that are paying extremely low salaries, or you're applying for roles that are very junior, then yeah, maybe you can apply for these types of sites and whatnot. But these are, believe it or not, these are actually Indian-based or India-based companies. So whilst they're marketed as Gulf solutions, they're typically more so aligned with the Indian job market. And if you're coming over from India, then perhaps you might find some utility with these job boards, but they're typically not going to lead to any. They're typically not going to lead to any outcomes. You're better off just using LinkedIn, in fairness. Next slide. Add success metrics to your CV with numbers. Now, one issue that I often see on CVs, and this makes them not very competitive, is it will say, oh, well, I increased, and I think it's just a ChatGPT thing, in fairness, because most CVs are ChatGPT generated or Claude generated or some sort of AI has generated them, so they all look exactly the same. I'm just reading some questions as well. That's why I'm in and out. The success metrics, if you're listing stuff and saying, well, or if like you've got a bullet point and it says, I increased operational efficiency by 30%, useless, right? It's useless. It's essentially useless. It doesn't mean anything to anyone. The points that you list on your CV, this is what's going to be. Just a quick one, guys. Because this is what's distracting me. The chat, as a matter of fact. If anyone's giving kind of advice to like list how to list your location and stuff like that, I wouldn't advise going along with it, because I've just seen some advice in there, like someone's advised you to list your location as Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and then they've advised you to list relocating to the UAE. But the advice is actually wrong. So you want to be careful about kind of looking at the chat and then think, okay, let me put that into my CV, or let me do this, because it might kind of stint or stunt your job search to some degree. So the success metrics that you need to be putting in, and there's a good question here, what if my role doesn't deal with metrics? How would I measure success if I don't have access to numbers? So when we say your role wouldn't have metrics, unless like your role would deal with metrics, unless your job was just to sort of sit in a chair and look at the wall, your job will have metrics. It will have metrics in the sense that, yes, you might not be a salesperson, you might not be, managing, or you might not be dealing with, direct dollars, pounds, and dirhams, right? That might not be the case. But if you're managing a team of 25 people and they're across various disciplines, that's a metric. That is a metric. It might not be a success metric. You could flip it as such, but it is a metric. Then you might have delivered 4 projects within X amount of time or X amount of value and whatnot, or managed X, Y, and Z that you successfully delivered and whatnot. It's about being specific. It might be, you decreased X by X and that led to something else. That's the kind of success metrics I'm talking about. Every role will have success metrics, even if you are standing at a zebra crossing and helping people cross the road, right? You successfully ensured the safety of X people to cross that road with 0 incidents for X amount of time, right? That is a success metric of somebody who stands at a zebra crossing and helps people cross the road. Someone who serves school dinners in a primary school, ensured that they've looked after X amount of, they served 350 kids a day. That's a metric. They ensured that not a single child had an incident in that room. That's a metric. They did X, Y, and Z. These are metrics. Every single position has metrics. If it doesn't, then your job would essentially be sit here, keep quiet, and do nothing. And even then, we could probably put some metrics on it. So every position has metrics, and you need to put these into your CV, and you must use numbers. You can't just say, I did this by 30%. You need to use numbers. You need to quantify it so that someone understands what you do. Right. What have we got? Write everything by hand. Now, when I say this, I don't mean sit down with pen and pad and write out your CV by hand. Although that might be inferred, that is not what I am talking about. What I am talking about is writing your CV via ChatGPT. If you're using ChatGPT to write your CV, I'm sorry, it will be instantly, automatically rejected. It will be automatically rejected. Most systems now, and even the larger ones that didn't have it previously, they will screen CVs before a recruiter ever gets a chance to look at them. They will filter them out. If your CV is picked up as AI generated, or it's got sort of snippets of AI in it, then it will be rejected. And it's not because the code of the CV is AI generated or something to that tune. It's because the writing because the writing style of the CV is so easily picked up, not only by a human being, but if a system's looking at it, it's just going to pick it up instantly. So you need to make sure that your CV is not written by ChatGPT. It's better for you to write a rubbish CV by hand. It's better for you to write a rubbish CV by hand than what would be considered a great CV by ChatGPT. You have to write it by hand. And it's not because that's how I like it. It's because that's going to essentially, uh, and that's because it's essentially going to get automatically rejected. So, yeah, sitting quiet in an office for 6 hours, looked at the wall for 3 hours, 100% their customer satisfaction. Exactly. So there's a metric for everything, right? Exactly that. So, right. There was a question here that I wanted to tackle before we moved on. Is there any tool to check if my CV is 100% ATS compliant? Unfortunately, no, there is not. There are so many systems. There were previously 22 that I had done my research on. But now there are more cropping up, like startup ones that are being adopted by some larger organizations. So these tools that are used, they're all going to have different parameters and they're all going to be set up differently. And to add to that, some of these tools are built internally. So to say, okay, that's going to be compliant, it's going to require a lot of understanding of nuance. So there's no one tool that you can just plug your CV into and it's going to tell you, yeah, that's great, yeah, that's good to go. You plug it into one tool, it's going to tell you, yeah, that's 90%. You plug it into another, it's going to tell you it's 2%. These ideas of sort of ATS compliant or an ATS checker. There's no such thing at this point in time. And another question was, if you kind of use ChatGPT to generate ideas and then implement them in your CV. Look, ChatGPT and AI and Canva cannot create an ATS compliant CV. No, 100% not. The idea that you can use ChatGPT and Claude to create a CV is misguided, and I will tell you why. You do not know what is going to what's going to set off the ATS identifying the CV as ChatGPT generated, or like you're not going to have that much experience creating CVs with ChatGPT to know what's going to trigger it and what isn't. So yeah, you can say, right, I'm going to try it and I'm just going to change it up a lot. But you don't know what you're changing. You're just changing things that you think. Whereas if you write it by hand, you know this isn't that you're not going to have an issue. So you're much better off avoiding it completely, writing it by hand, or you can try it and test your luck. But I would rather write it by hand, know that I'm not going to have these issues, and then because it might even be the formatting that could set it off, right? So you better off safe than sorry. There's no point in you doing it then spending 2 weeks because you won't be able to ascertain as to whether or not it's good or not for about 2 weeks. So you could be sending the CV out for 2 weeks and just getting rejecting its junk, as opposed to just simply writing it by hand. If you aren't able to write it by hand effectively, even knowing your experience and your background, then I would suggest either you need to find more time. You need to find more time to put time into the search, or there's another issue at play. Don't leave any gaps unexplained. You cannot leave gaps in your CV. Your CV cannot have gaps in it. If you've got a gap in your experience, or there's you've not got a current role, this is going to be serious trouble. Like, you have to have gaps closed on your CV. If you took 6 months out, you went on sabbatical, or you took maternity leave, or you took paternity and it was a longer leave or something like that, and you didn't go back, or whatever might have happened, you cannot have a gap in your CV because it is not compliant with systems. For those who aren't aware, when you apply, and this will give you a bit more context about what I'm talking about here, when I'm saying don't use ChatGPT because you'll get automatically rejected, don't do X, Y, and Z because you're going to get automatically rejected. When I say automatically rejected, your CV is getting plugged into a tool, a piece of software that assesses your CV, assesses if it gives them all the information that they require. It's essentially like a CRM. Assesses whether or not they've got all the information they require. Then it will assess if you are suitable. So first things first, is this CV done correctly? And the best way to describe it, the easiest way to explain, is a passport photo. If I took a passport photo here and I sent it for my Emirates ID and I sent it with this background, maybe it'll get rejected. And I could send it 100 times and it will keep on getting rejected. But that might be because it needs to be on a white background. Doesn't matter how many times I send it. It doesn't matter how many things I change. If it's not on a white background, it's going to be rejected because that is the system that they have. So same thing being, if you're putting this in incorrect, if you're putting this stuff into this ATS and it's not compliant, it's just going to keep on getting rejected. So you cannot have any gaps on your CV. You have to close them. Font matters. Now, this isn't to say that there's a very, you have to use Arial, for example, on your CV. It's not to say that you have to use Arial. There are other options. There are a few other things that you can use. But so there's a couple questions here where people are asking, like, can some parts be written by ChatGPT? Can we just can I write it on ChatGPT and then copy and paste it on Word with a new font? If like I like if you want to get automatically rejected, yes. If you want to get a job, no. Is as politely as I can put it. So in terms of your fonts, you should be using like an Arial or something like that. Or you should potentially be like a Calibri, I believe it's called, or Caliburli, or whatever it's called. That font, or a font that is standardized. You shouldn't be using any sort of squiggly fonts. You shouldn't be using any sort of Gothic fonts or anything like that. The fonts should be simple, easy to read. Someone said, if you're currently unemployed, how do we best explain that gap on the CV? If you're currently unemployed, then what you should do, unless it's been like 2 years or something like that, and even still, this might be the best option, is just extend your previous employment until present. And then when you interview, just say, oh, look, I must have sent you like an old CV. I'm not employed with them anymore. Because the idea is to get the interview. And then once you've got the interview, you can then at least have a chance to explain yourself. Right? You can have a chance to explain yourself. Let's see. File save size is critical. Most ATSs and even our website, if you upload your CV to our website, it will not accept it if it's over a megabyte. The reason it won't accept it is because we're not storing documents that are 8 megabytes in size on AWS and getting charged through the ears for it. Neither are companies. The reason that they won't accept it is not only because of that, and they don't want to pay for storage for these crazy file sizes, but to add to that, if you're uploading something that's like 10 megabytes, that is, a CV should not be that size. What are you uploading? Is it a virus? Is it some sort of malware? Is it a file that's going to be open and it's going to cause damage to the company if someone unwillingly opens it, or unbeknownst to them, it turns out it was something malicious? A Word doc, a simple CV, should be a megabyte at most. Ideally, it should be below half a megabyte. It should be very small. It should be extremely small. So if your CV is over 1 megabyte, the chances of you getting automatically rejected again are close to probably about 99%. It must be small. It must be a reasonable size. Anything under 1 megabyte is fine. One moment. There is someone there, Jeremy Lydia. This particular individual, if you guys just report this, it's whenever you see stuff like that, it's always a scam. People don't recruit like that. People don't say. It's a good example, actually. If you guys look in the chat where it says, if you are open to remote work, kindly send me a connection request to discuss potential opportunities in the hiring process. Remote work as what? An accountant, a salesperson, a lawyer? What just remote work? Like, whenever you see stuff like this, it's definitively 100% a scam. So yeah, don't interact with that. It's never a good idea. Right, where are we? Let's see. Is one page acceptable? Yes, we'll dive into that. I believe that's going to be discussed. And someone's asked, one recruiter in Doha told me to add my marital status on my CV. Is this true? He said it will help the hiring manager to know for visa purposes. No, you shouldn't include marital status. Now, whilst on the odd occasion, it might help. On the rare occasion, extremely rare occasion, it might help. Extremely rare occasion, it might help. But that's 1 in 1,000, right? It's not common. It's not something you should be including. If a recruiter tells you to add it, just add it. Just add it. That's fine. But it shouldn't be like a default. The same way if a recruiter said, look, my client loves to receive their CVs in bloody, Times New Roman. Fine, change it to Times New Roman and send it to them. Once the recruiters ask you to do something, then fine, just do it as long as it's a reasonable request. Not that changing your CV to Times New Roman is a reasonable request, but if they ask you to add that, then just add it, fine, but don't use that as your default. Definitely not. The name of the save file will be seen before they read the CV itself. So, not only is this picture or no picture on the CV, use a picture if it's a high quality picture and it's not put in a way that's going to increase the file size of your CV. If you're doing it on a Word doc, do not use a picture. The reason you should not use a picture if you're doing a Word doc is because the likelihood is, if you enter it incorrectly, it may corrupt the way that the ATS reads it. If you're doing it on a PDF, then that should be fine. Please, guys, do not engage with the people saying, look, come and get this job here. It's not legitimate. As I mentioned, for anyone who's new to the stream and they've not heard what I've said previously, please do not engage with that person who's saying contact them for remote jobs. So the name of the CV, it should simply be your first and last name, nothing else. So your CV, your name's Bob Smith. Your CV should be Bob Smith, not Bob Smith CV, not Bob Smith resume, not Bob Dylan Smith. It should just be Bob Smith. And your name on your CV should also be Bob Smith. And the name on your LinkedIn, you guessed it, Bob Smith. It shouldn't be, oh, I like to go by the name Dylan Smith on LinkedIn because my friends call me Dylan. And then on my CV, I call myself Bob Dylan Smith because that's my full name. And then on my CV, I title it Bob Smith Dylan CV 2023. You need to be precise. Your name on your CV, Bob Smith. Your name on your LinkedIn, Bob Smith. The name on the save file, Bob Smith. Everything is Bob Smith, extremely clear, no room for confusion. They only know you by one name. They are not searching for you by various different names and scattering everything across. That is something that we see, and it's a huge problem because people are using their preferred name on LinkedIn. Then they're using not first name, last name resume, not first name, last name CV, not first name, last name my CV, just first name, last name, nothing else. Nothing else. Not first name, last name project manager, not first name, last name UAE, just first name, last name for your CV. Nothing else, not anything after, not anything before, not anything in the middle. Nothing. And similarly, LinkedIn, your first name, your last name. You do not need your middle name in there. You do not need several names. You don't need 3. You don't need 4. You don't need 5. You need your first. You need your last. Make it easy. If you want to include project manager on the end and save file in your CV, do so. Everyone else who doesn't do so will have an advantage over you. It's completely up to you. But yeah, the save file matters. And make sure you save it as something. Don't just randomly save it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The amount of times, genuinely, I'm talking upwards of 100 times. Genuinely, I'm not joking about upwards of 100 times. I've received people's bank statements. I've received people's medical reports. I've received people's diagnosis, like a diagnosis from a doctor. I received someone's, someone had an issue with their knee joint or something like that. And I received this as their CV. There needs to be more precision here. If this is happening and then you're spending 6 to 12 months to find a job, makes sense, right? It needs to be the case where there's more precision in play here. You can use Word for a CV, by the way. Yes, a Word doc does do well for a CV. What about cover letters? Cover letters should not be used. Cover letters are not going to help you. You are much better. Important is communication. You are much better off disregarding your cover letter and just sending a really good follow-up message instead. Someone's asked a question, and I don't know if this is what was intended, but I do want to answer this because this is something that is I always say I don't know if we could say a controversial topic, but it's something that some people might not like to hear. But I'd rather tell you what you need to hear as opposed to what's going to make people happy to hear. Someone's asked, how important is communication in achieving success on the job? I don't know what they mean by that. On the job, well, if you're in communication or you're in a role where you're communicating with people, I'd say very important. If you're in a role where you're not communicating with people at all, then maybe not that important. I don't know if that's what is meant, but I'm going to answer it in a different way. If you, and I'm basing this on thousands of cases, right? Whilst you guys will have a siloed look at your job search and the job search process and the job market from your lens and the lens of people that you know, I will say this from seeing and working with thousands of people and speaking to thousands of people and seeing the same challenges time and time again. Um, if you are even good at your job, but you are unable to communicate effectively, i.e., your English is weak, or you have trouble understanding questions that are being asked, or your written, verbal, or otherwise communication ability is low, and you're unable to communicate effectively, it doesn't matter how good you are, landing a job is going to be extremely difficult. You can have the best CV in the world, the best LinkedIn profile in the entire world, but if you aren't able to communicate effectively, you don't have a high level of emotional intelligence, you're unable to kind of mirror the person that you're interviewing with, landing an offer, maybe not landing an interview, but landing an offer is going to be extremely difficult. You must be able to communicate effectively because that is one of the most important things. That's what's going to convince someone and encourage someone to give you an offer. Right. Next, using LinkedIn to fast track your search. Um, and sorry, I'm just going to go back onto that last point really quickly about communication because of how important it is. Um, One of the most common issues that we find when either we're working with someone or we're helping someone or just someone's reached out and asked for a bit of help, or in the private network they might have sent a message in and said, hey, look, can you review this message that I'm sending out and whatnot. One of the most common roadblocks that people are facing when it comes down to landing interviews and landing offers is the communication thing. So, like, being completely like transparent with what I see, most messages that I see sent out, like follow-up messages, outreach messages, saying to people, hey, look, I've applied for this job and X, Y, and Z, trying to essentially advance the search. Or even it might be like follow-up thank you emails and stuff like this. Most of them have spelling mistakes in them. Being completely honest, most of them have spelling mistakes in them. And I'm not talking about, oh, only from people who are junior. No, I'm talking, people who are asking for 100,000 dirham a month. I'm not talking exclusively junior people. I'm talking majoritively, as a matter of fact, manager grade and above. Spelling mistakes in the outreach messages, copy and pasted outreach messages, coming across potentially even rude when verbally speaking with someone, or dismissive or blunt, or not coming across friendly or likable or personable, not having emotional intelligence when they're engaging with people. This is one of the largest factors when it comes down to hiring. Your skill set is one thing, but people hire people. People hire people they like, that will integrate well with the team, that they would look forward to working with and engaging with on a daily basis, people that they would be happy to present in front of their clients, in front of their stakeholders. Because personality, whilst yes, maybe it can be taught and communication can be taught, it's a lot more difficult to teach than sort of hard skills. For example, someone who's managed a team of 50 and they need them to manage a team of 250, I would rather hire a person who has managed a team of 50 and is an excellent communicator and comes across as someone who's just brilliant. The moment you speak to them, you think this person's great. This person's fantastic. I love the way they conduct themselves. I love the way they behaved in that interview. I love the questions they were asking, how they were engaging with me. I loved everything about them. That kind of person's the one that gets hired over the person who's managed 300 and 250 and 200 and has everything they want on the job description. They will never get hired over that person who's not got everything that's required, but is more personable and likable. They are the ones who get hired frequently. So, using LinkedIn to fast track your search. And this does lead on quite nicely from that question that was asked previously in the chat about LinkedIn and do recruiters headhunt outside of LinkedIn? No, as I said previously, they do not typically headhunt outside of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the number one space where all headhunting and recruitment and talent acquisition takes place by way of direct approach. Um, and that is why I've created a section solely on this. Um, Really good question. Really brilliant question. How do you think it's best to balance showing your personality and still sounding professional? I struggle with this balance. So, that is a brilliant question. And I just want to answer it before I move on. Now, the best way to do this is something that actually Ross says. A lot of you will be familiar with Ross. Um, Take the interviewer's persona, take the way that they're behaving, and take it one notch up. One notch up. So it may be the case where you're speaking to them initially and they're relatively sort of flat. Be a little bit more happy than they are. If you see that they match that, step up again. Keep on gradually going one notch up above them. And that is how you're going to essentially not overdo it to the point where they think, yeah, bloody hell, she's off the rails. But you're going to do enough that they think that person was brilliant. You know, she was amazing. She was so lovely to speak to. I enjoyed that interview. They're the interviews that I enjoy. They're the interviews that stick with me, the ones that I enjoy. Most people don't enjoy interviewing. It's a pretty mundane task, and you're often just saying the same thing again and again and getting similar answers back again and again where people are just giving you the same spiel. So when you actually have an interview and you think, you know what, that person was actually really good to speak to, and I actually enjoyed speaking to them, they're the people that you want to get on your team. So just take it one notch above them. If they match you, go up again. If they match you again, go up again. And ideally, they keep on matching you, and you can end the interview with laughing your heads off, right? Making jokes, laughing, and speaking personally after the interview's over. That is the ideal situation. I have always said if you can get the interviewer to laugh in the interview, you're almost guaranteed to have another interview. You're almost guaranteed, unless there's like a severe issue, like the role is 100% conducted in Arabic and they found out you don't speak Arabic, then fine, fair enough, right? Then you probably won't get it, right? But you might, because they like you that much. It's, unless there's a very specific, hard reason why they can't invite you back, they will if you've made them laugh and you've had a chat with them and whatnot. So, yeah. Now, LinkedIn, first impressions are absolutely everything. And when I say first impressions, I'm talking a few things here. Number one would be your photo. So on LinkedIn, it's so important that your photo is professional. And when I say professional, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a suit, doesn't necessarily mean you're in very formal attire, you've got a blazer on. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Whilst that would be fine and appropriate for most people, that's not essential. What it could be What it could be is, you're I don't know, you're in marketing and you're in a pretty fun type role. Perhaps you're working in social media marketing or something like that, and you've got like a kind of fun looking profile photo. That's fine. It's not a problem because it is professional for your space. If you're a CFO, then maybe not. Then maybe that wouldn't work. You should probably be in a suit and tie and be pretty formal, and that would be appropriate and professional for your space. For example, I've seen some people in construction and they're in a suit and they've got a hard hat on. And typically, while I wouldn't advise that, project manager, they've got a hard hat on, while I wouldn't advise that, in certain situations, it can be appropriate simply because that is professional for your space. So it's not to say that you've got to kind of conform to one particular way, but your profile photo does matter because it's the first thing that people will see. And when I say it does matter, if I'm honest, it's people will judge you based on it. You will be judged, right? When people look at your profile photo, if they think it's low quality, you look scruffy, you look careless, you didn't really put much effort in, it's like this, and you're half out of the frame, it doesn't give off a good image, right? It really doesn't give off a good image. So what I would suggest is really doing something that's both suitable for your industry and your space, but also high quality. Because no matter what, high quality is important. A lot of people have asked here, like, so what about profile photo for doctors or healthcare professionals? Yes, having like if you're a doctor, having a stethoscope around your neck, for example, yeah, it's probably pretty good, right? It's probably fine. It's probably a good idea. However, if the photo is grainy or you're not centered properly or the background's a bit rubbish or whatever the case might be, that would not be a good profile photo because it's just not high quality enough. Quality is very important. Make sure it's like it's not pixelated and low quality because people will just look over you. People will look over you. Now, a lot of people are asking in the chat about the green open to work banner. So I'll have a little go at that quickly after I sip my coffee. So the green open to work banner, I've spoken about it many times before, so I won't spend too long attacking it. It's not a good idea at all. The green open to work banner says, when I was heavily involved in hands-on recruiting, the moment I saw someone with the green open to work banner around their profile, you all will know what I'm talking about when I say the green open to work banner, right? My immediate thoughts would be they're desperate. And whilst they very well may be desperate, you might be desperate. Telling people you're desperate isn't the best idea, right? Companies don't typically want to hire people who are in a desperate situation where they're potentially not making the best decisions for themselves. If you're desperate, you're often not in the ideal scenario to make big decisions like accepting a job. Desperate people sometimes accept jobs that aren't in their best interest and then leave in their probation period or leave 6 months later or leave 12 months later, indicating an unsuccessful hire for a company. And potentially for an agency recruiter or something, it might indicate a rebate in their fee where they have to give the company money back. So you want to be very cautious and very adverse to putting the green open to work banner on. You should not be using it. You can get all of the benefits of having the green open to work banner on simply by setting your profile as open to work for recruiters only. So set it on, set the function on, but don't put the green banner on. It doesn't help you. And I can tell you now, if I was interviewing you, if I was in charge of interviewing you and I was targeted on getting you to accept the lowest salary possible, which a lot of HR is targeted on that. If that was my target and I saw you with the green open to work banner and you said you wanted 40K, I would offer you something like 22 and we'd probably end up closing on about 26. You wouldn't get me any more than that. I'd offer you 26 and you probably take it because you're desperate. And I know you'd take it. And I know you've got no other options because if you had other options, you would not have had the green open to work banner on. You lose all leverage, so do not use it. And that also comes into first impressions. Mistakes will not be forgiven. As I mentioned at the start of this session, the UAE, KSA, GCC job market is hyper saturated. That means for every single position that a company lists, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants lining up, waiting to be seen, waiting to be interviewed, waiting to send their CV in, waiting to just be given a chance, and they will jump at it. So, why would a recruiter or a hiring manager speak with someone who's not capitalized the first letter of their last name? Why would they when there are people who haven't made this mistake? For me, if I was dealing with a recruiter and they presented, let's assume I'm a hiring manager, I'm an operations director. I'm going to give you a scenario here. I'm an operations director for whatever company, Emirates. I'm an operations director for Emirates. A recruiter from Manpower or Hayes comes to me and they say, hey, look, we want to send you across some project managers or whatever. And I say, okay, fine. Send them across. If you hire any of these project managers, Zach, we want you to pay us 20% of their annual salary as a fee. They're looking for 40K, so it's going to come out to about 100,000 dirham. Okay, Mrs. Recruiter at Hayes. Okay, Mrs. Recruiter at Manpower. I'll have a look at your profiles. You then send me across this. The recruiter then sends me across a profile. I look at it. Oh, there's no country code on here. Oh 07. Well, I'm not from the UK, assuming, so I don't know what number that is. 07, well, it's supposed to be plus 447. It's not going to be 07. No due diligence. On the LinkedIn as well, no due diligence. Okay, their last name, there's no capitalization on the first letter of their last name. Do they not understand how to capitalize? Like, don't they? Like, is their English super poor and this recruiter is sending them across? Their about section, they've just used ChatGPT for the entire thing. They've worked at companies that aren't even registered on LinkedIn, and I'm seeing this. They're working with disconnected companies. I have no idea who these companies are. Their title is project manager on their experience, but it's lowercase p, lowercase m, right? Their English language is set to conversational on LinkedIn, right? There's these issues. They've got like 20 connections. I'm going to think to this recruiter, is this the standard that you set yourself to? If it was me, I'd never work with that recruiter again, ever. I would never forgive that. And that's because I would take enough pride in my work to never work with someone who didn't take that pride in theirs. So if you are not taking that pride in the way that you are looking for a job, you cannot expect people to present your profile. You cannot expect people to look at you. You cannot expect people to want to interview you, present you to their clients, present you to the hiring managers that are in charge of these positions, because you haven't given them that confidence in yourself. Look at it this way, and it's a very brutal way to look at it, but if you look at it this way, you will be better and you will be better off for it. You'll land more interviews, you'll land more jobs and whatnot. If there's one mistake in your profile or your CV, you do not deserve an interview. You don't deserve it. With that mindset, you will now look through your profile, you'll look through your CV, and you will ensure you do not have a single mistake, and you will be ahead of everyone who does make these mistakes. Now you have positioned yourself essentially in like the top 1%. So you need to hold yourself to such a high standard, because this is your profession, this is this is your livelihood, and this is your reputation on the professional market, and you have to take it seriously. Otherwise, recruiters and hiring teams and talent acquisition teams will not. As I said previously, if it was a case where they had, 10 profiles, then yes, they'd be more forgiving. They'd be willing to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, this person's made these mistakes, but we don't really have like loads of other people that we can look at for these roles. So let's just interview them anyway. That is not the case in the UAE. It's not the case in Dubai. It's not the case in Abu Dhabi. It's not the case in Riyadh. It's not the case in Doha, because everyone wants to move there. So you cannot get away with mistakes. Reverse engineer every step is the next point. So when you're creating your LinkedIn profile, don't just think, okay, the aim here is to make it look nice. Yeah, that's an objective. You do want it to look nice. You want it to be easy on the eye. You don't want it to look like a load of rubbish. But with that being said, you want to primarily focus on building it for function. And when I say that, LinkedIn breaks up into two parts for this purpose anyway. You have LinkedIn Recruiter and then LinkedIn. LinkedIn Recruiter is a commercial recruitment solution that LinkedIn provide. It plugs into LinkedIn and it allows recruiters to extract profiles based on keywords, based on past experiences, based on skills, based on words found in the profile, based on languages, based on absolutely everything that you could think of. So when a recruiter runs this search, you have to ask yourself, what is it exactly that this recruiter will be typing? What will this recruiter be inputting into this search to find me? For example, are they going to be looking for PMP if you're a project manager? Are they going to be looking for CFA? Are they going to be looking at what is it that they're going to be looking for? Is it agile methodologies? Is it they're going to be looking for big four, like previous big four experience? Is it going to be that they're looking for people who have done X, Y, and Z? You have to ask yourself, what are they going to be looking for? Once you've identified all of the things that they are going to be looking for, that is when you are ready to create the profile around this information. Don't create it and as you go think, maybe they look for that, and then just input it. Before you start creating your profile, or before you go and edit your profile, sit down and think, if a hiring manager was to brief a recruiter or a talent acquisition expert or whoever it might be on how to find me, what would they say? What is it that they'd say? What are them key things that they would say? Go and look for this. They're the things that should be throughout your profile. Do not reach out until you know why you're reaching out. Now, if you're reaching out to people before you have solid justification and reasoning for reaching out, you may be wasting a sort of outreach message. So if you're messaging a recruiter and just saying, "Hi, keen to share insights and share thoughts," they're going to think, "Okay, useless. Not going to respond to them." Just being honest, that's what they're going to think. Or you message a hiring manager and say, "Oh wow, I've seen you've worked in PwC for 25 years. That's so impressive. Let's share insights and get coffee." They're going to think, "All right, again, useless. I'm not speaking to them. No chance. Waste of time, waste of my time, waste of their time." They're clearly just not they're not someone that I want to speak to at all, because it's just a waste of everyone's time. However, if you've now identified, okay, look, I can add value to this person. I'm not saying, "Oh yeah, let's go get random coffee together." People don't have time for that. The idea of a coffee culture, it's not here. I had that impression when I first came to the GCC, and I get it, um, but it's not in the recruitment sphere. That's not how it works. Add value, identify why it's worth them speaking to you, and that is when you'll be likely to get responses. If you can't identify why it's worth them responding to you, why it's worth them engaging with you, why it's in their best interest to speak to you, then it's better that you leave messaging them until you can figure that out. Someone asked, I came across a recruiter saying that your CV shouldn't be more than 1,000 words. Is this correct? If you've heard that outside of me, then they've actually copied what I've said. So yes, it is correct. It is indeed. So one thing to note with that is that your CV not being more than 1,000 words is nuanced. It's nuanced. Now, there's some advice that, whilst yes, it's correct, it might not apply in every single case. That's not to say that, like, for example, me saying that your CV shouldn't be more than 1,000 words isn't me saying that your CV will be automatically rejected if you've got 1,001 words or 1,500 words or whatever. But it's a sort of that is a base guideline to follow, right? There are going to be some occasions where it's not a negative to have more, but the general rule of thumb is that you shouldn't have more than 1,000 words. I've seen this question asked a bunch of times about. This is a very strange question. So, um, again, guys, please do not engage with this person in the chat saying, "If you are open to remote work, kindly send me a connection request to discuss potential opportunities in the hiring process." If I'm going to be really blunt here, if you fall for that, probably deserve it. Look at the message, guys. That is the indication of the highest degree that it is not legitimate. Please do not engage with that. So someone's asked, if job applications through Naukri, Gulf, Bait, Indeed, Gulf Talent, or Glassdoor don't get responses from India, then how do chances improve after relocating to Dubai and Oman, etc.? Well, you shouldn't be applying by these portals. Um, you're applying from India, you're using Indian job portals to apply for jobs in the GCC. You're better off running a search that's more built around the GCC as opposed to applying through these portals. It's not going to be useful for you. You're better off just sticking to LinkedIn and applying directly via the company's website. Moving to Dubai or Oman or wherever isn't going to increase your chances if you're applying via Golf Talent, Naukri Golf, and these kinds of companies. It's going to be exactly the same. Um, can you continue providing insights on the outreach message? Yes. So, look, when you're reaching out to people, it's absolutely critical that it is a value add approach. And when I say value add, I did mention this at the start of the discussion, that value add is not value add necessarily to the company. So it's not necessarily saying, oh, director at PwC or director at ADNOC, oh, I can increase X for the company by X. They probably don't care. They probably don't care. The only time you can actually go in and say, look, I can do X for the company is if you're reaching out to a founder or someone very senior at a smaller organization. That is what is going to, be impactful, because this person really directly and intimately cares about what you're saying. But a director at PwC isn't going to be, super excited and think, wow, I need to urgently get on this if they're going to do X, Y, and Z for PwC. They probably don't care about PwC. They probably don't. They probably don't care. Most people who work for a huge organization like that, they pretend to care about the company, but they really don't. They care about what they need to care about as part of their job, but they're not going to be thinking, "Oh, wow, yeah, I need to go above and beyond and speak to these people who are reaching out, offering stuff to the PwC." That's just how it goes. However, if you reach out to them and say, "Hey, look, I appreciate you're looking for X, Y, and Z. I know that finding that is going to be extremely difficult. I know you're looking for someone with experience at KPMG, Deloitte, or EY, like previous Big Four experience, whatever, and you need these particular skills. I can imagine that must be a really difficult search to run. Has your talent acquisition, has your TA team managed to find anyone for this yet?" They're going to come back and say, "No, actually, it's been a bloody nightmare. We've not managed to find anyone." Then you go in, and that's the kind of value add approach. That's why you're reaching out. Now, it's not always going to be as easy as that. There's going to be some more nuanced scenarios where it's not super clear where you can add value, and if you're not 100% clear where you can add value, what you can do is be presumptuous. So assume where you can add value. I've seen X, Y, and Z. I'd imagine that's making you extremely busy. I know you're probably juggling a million things right now. And then you go in and kind of offer some sort of solution by way of, it's the same objective. I want a job, but you're saying it in a way that makes it seem like you're reaching out to give them something, as opposed to the million other people who are reaching out and saying, "Oh, hi, sir, can you refer me?" Right? That they're not going to engage with it. Before I jump on to the next point, Zach, please address the age issue in the UAE. There are so many contradicting views. Thank you. Thanks for the question. So, with the age issue, I'll really quickly touch on it. Once you reach a point where you are at or getting close to 65, there are some issues that occur, not because a company isn't going to want to hire you, but because getting a visa can be tricky. If you are getting close to 65, what you would want to do is state clearly on your CV. And if you don't have this, then you need to sponsor yourself, but state that you've got a golden visa. That will essentially mitigate any issues that you would have with this. Or you need to say, self-sponsored or something like that. You need to sponsor yourself because the company is not going to want to go through the process of trying to acquire a visa for you or sponsorship. So just say that you don't require sponsorship. Right. Next point. So near enough every single message should be value focused. Now, what I mean by that is leading on from the previous message. Instead of being someone who's looking to take value, you should be somebody who is offering value. Now, people by nature do not like to be approached for charity. They might like to help people. They might like to give stuff out. They might like to, help people wherever they can. Most people do. Most people are good natured people. right? I do believe that most people will help people. They will do right by people where they can, and people are more than happy to help wherever they're able to. Typically, I do find, especially in the UAE, KSA, people typically, feel like, yeah, I've been in a similar position to you, so I'm happy to help you. But with that being said, people don't like being asked for things, right? People don't like being asked for things. Like, just by nature, and you guys will know it yourself. I don't need to kind of explain this, but you're probably more than happy to buy someone something, but if they ask you to buy it for them, it's not as well received. Similarly, if someone's reaching out to you and saying, "Oh, can you get me a job? Can you refer me to X, Y, and Z?" You're going to be like, "Oh, bloody hell, like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go out of my way to refer this random stranger." But if you knew someone and you wanted to help them, then you would do so. You would perhaps push their profile if you thought they were decent. Instead of going in with the, "Oh, can you do this for me?" and then just hoping that they're like an extremely good natured person and they haven't had 100 people reach out with the exact same thing. Instead of that, go in with value and say something to the tune of, you know, I can do this for you. Obviously, it would have to be worded in a way that's going to be appropriate, relevant, and it's going to pique their interest. But the idea behind it should be, I want to do this for you. I'm not asking you for anything. All I'm trying to do is add value. If you get that right, your chances of getting referred, getting recruiters, hiring teams, talent acquisition teams, all of these people come back to you with something fruitful will skyrocket. Now, the next one, engage, but engage correctly. So what I mean by that is, for example, everyone who's commented on this, everyone who's attended this, you have now told LinkedIn what you want, right? You've told LinkedIn, like, this is land your next role in the UAE in 90 days, job search, fast track session. You are telling LinkedIn, this is what I am interested in right now. If you give me more of this, you spent 2 hours on this session, or an hour and 35 minutes thus far. Hopefully you're with me till the end. You've spent 2 hours of time on LinkedIn, active, commenting, engaging, watching. LinkedIn is a very smart tool and a very smart platform, a very smart solution. They want you to spend more time on LinkedIn, and they want you to have a very positive view of LinkedIn. They want you to say to other people, I got this job from LinkedIn. That's why they've got that feature. Like, you might have seen it before on people's experience, where it will say, oh, I got this job from LinkedIn. Like, it's a feature. Now, in terms of engaging, whenever you engage, anything that you do, and I'm not only talking about liking, commenting, even reading something. For example, when you're scrolling on your phone and you're running through it on LinkedIn and you read something, the LinkedIn will track the amount of time that you spend. Thank you for advising that I've replied to that question that guy keeps on asking, several times. Appreciate that. But yeah, with the engagement, everything you do is tracked, because LinkedIn wants to make you use the platform as much as you possibly can, or as much as as much as they possibly can. So everything that you do will lead to potential outcomes. Now, with LinkedIn Recruiter, I was explaining what LinkedIn Recruiter, how it operates previously. Um, LinkedIn Recruiter takes two things into account as to which profiles they're going to push forward for recruiters and hiring teams to contact. So this is directly related to you getting headhunted. Number one, the way you've set up your profile. And number two, the type of engagement you put into your profile. So if you're constantly commenting on stuff coming out of Dubai, out of Abu Dhabi, out of Riyadh, out of Jeddah, out of the GCC, LinkedIn is going to know that this is the location you're interested in. Now, you're also constantly engaging with banks, with financial institutes, with consulting firms. These are the types of companies you keep engaging with, or you keep on engaging with these tech startups time and time and time and time again, or you're solely engaging with these insurance companies time and time again. LinkedIn absorbs this information and they build almost like a profile for you, right? So When now the insurance company, you've been applying for, applied for 500 jobs with insurance companies, you followed 50 insurance companies in the GCC, you're liking all of their content, you've got 2,000 connections and 1,500 of them are working in the insurance space, and you work in a particular designation, whatever. All of this data is going to be acquired, it's going to be put together, and that's going to spit out on LinkedIn Recruiter and tell these recruiters and hiring teams exactly what it is that you are looking for. Now, if you do this correctly, when recruiters and hiring teams run a search via LinkedIn Recruiter, if you've been engaging well, you will come up as a star or selected or preferred applicant. It's almost like the best way to describe it is, when you search for something on Google and you see at the top, like the ads, Google ads, the pay-per-click ads, and you've got like 3 of them at the top, that's how you will appear. So your chance of getting contacted are essentially almost guaranteed. It's almost guaranteed. That's how impactful it is. On top of that, and this is something that I'm sure most of you won't know, so hopefully it's like a bit of a pullback on the curtain for you. When you use Easy Apply and apply for a job, if you've got a good LinkedIn profile and you've been engaging with the right content, when you apply for a job on LinkedIn, you will actually be put into a separate folder. So typically, let's say there was 1,000 applications, there would be maybe 20 or 30 of these applications that would be put into a separate folder, and it would be like ideal applicants. And these ones, people will typically view all of them by hand. They'll scroll through it before they look at anyone else. So if you've been engaging correctly on LinkedIn, the chances of you ending up in this folder are going to be so much higher. That's why if you're not really using LinkedIn and you're just logging on and applying for jobs, the chances of you landing anything by Easy Apply are near none. It's near nothing. And this is often why, this is interesting. So the more senior people tend to be in age and in experience, they tend to be less active on LinkedIn, just on on a whole anyway. Like you don't get, it's relatively new for C-suite professionals, VPs and whatnot to be commenting and actively engaging with LinkedIn. Number one, because perhaps, when they were early career, finding a job was done very differently and whatnot. And then perhaps this is a new nuance, or perhaps it could be because they're extremely busy. They're managing very high stakes engagements. They're completely swamped. They don't have the time, and they're not investing, that time into LinkedIn, perhaps because they don't see the value in it. But that's why people will tend to say, well, if you're looking for senior engagements, Easy Apply is essentially useless. But it's not. It's not. Most of the time it is. It's not the best way to go about it. But if you're using LinkedIn correctly, it can actually be quite useful. So yeah, make sure the engagement that you're putting in is correct, and also make sure that you're not engaging with stuff that's not regionally appropriate. Even if something's appropriate, i.e., it's in your industry, if it's based in the US, for example, you're going to confuse the algorithm away from the fact that you're looking for stuff in the UAE or wherever it might be that you're searching. So be mindful that it's relevant and both regionally appropriate. A really good question here. Does my LinkedIn connections, or do my LinkedIn connections need to reach a certain number before being recognized? Yes, they do. So until you have over 500 connections on LinkedIn, it essentially doesn't function properly, or it doesn't start to function properly. The more you have, the better. However, caveat here is that if it's not appropriate, like the connections that you're making aren't relevant, that will be like a net negative. It will work against you. The connections can't just be anyone. It has to be relevant. It doesn't have to be people above you, people below you, people at your mark, but it has to be people relevant to you. Even if you'll be cross collaborating with certain individuals or potentially like clients and stuff like that, they just have to be relevant to you. For example, if you're a finance manager and you're connecting with, artists and stuff like that, it's not going to be useful at all. It's not going to be useful whatsoever. You need to connect with people who are relevant to you. Let's have a look. Connecting is only valuable if done correctly. So yeah, this is I was brought onto this automatically. I've had quite a few questions here. One moment, one moment. Someone said no UAE number, no callbacks. Is it really that simple or just a myth? It is a myth. You don't require a UAE number to get a callback. Definitely not. This is an international market. Most people here are expats, like especially in Dubai. It's not like like there's so many expats here, so many expats. People aren't anti-expat. I wouldn't worry about that. What do you think of LinkedIn Premium? Is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it if your LinkedIn profile is currently working for you. If your LinkedIn profile is doing nothing for you right now and you're not getting anything, then you need to make a change. You need to fix it. You need to start being more active. You need to do something before getting premium because it's essentially going to add 10% utility to what you're getting right now. And if what you're getting right now is zero, that's not going to bring it up to 10%. It's just going to stay at zero. So you need to make sure that your LinkedIn's currently working for you, and then getting LinkedIn Premium will be essentially like a boost for that. Um, Interesting. If you're currently unemployed, what types of posts would you recommend sharing on LinkedIn to enhance engagement? Um, in honesty, if you're unemployed, or even if you are employed, if you're actively looking for a job, posting on LinkedIn um, isn't the best way to spend your time. And the reason it's not the best way to spend your time is because to write a good post is going to take you, if you're not seasoned in writing posts for LinkedIn, it's going to take you a couple of hours. And in that couple of hours, you could have put out, 50, 60 comments or likes, or, you could have applied for, 10, 20 jobs, 30 jobs, or you could have easily applied to 50, 100 jobs. You could have done so much more with that time instead of writing one post that's likely going to get, 200, 300 views or something to that tune. It's not worth it. Doing posts is fine and it's great once you've got a job, and you shouldn't post to get a job because it's a very time consuming activity and it's not going to bear any fruit for several months in most cases. So you're better off commenting, liking, engaging, reposting, and doing that sort of engagement, faster engagement, applying, easy apply, connecting with people, following companies, engaging with company content, attending events like this, as opposed to writing posts, because uh, whilst the intention's correct, it won't have the desired result. That's a really good question, though. Let's see. And then someone's also said, would it help writing articles showcasing your skills? Again, not really, because of the time investment that it would take. You're just better off spending that time elsewhere. Um, if someone said I've got 18,000 connections, but my post isn't getting reach, yeah, again, like your post, you shouldn't really be posting. It's not really the best use of your time, but very good questions nonetheless. Let's see what we got. I believe. Oh, your horses. I think I have frozen. Bear with me. Oh, blimey. Yeah, so there we go. Right. Let's open up for some questions and answers. I will answer as many as I can. I'm going to dive straight in because I know I usually get through a couple of these and then I have a run out of time. So fire your questions here. I am going to skip past any questions that aren't asked correctly, like if I'm unable to understand the question or what you mean by the question, or if I've already answered it in the discussion, I might skip over it. So please ask any questions you've got in the chat, and if I can, I will answer it. Does changing your location on your CV mean we need to change the location on our LinkedIn profile too? Not necessarily. Ideally, yes. Ideally, yes, but it isn't like a mandate. In an ideal world, you will. But if for whatever reason you can't, i.e., it's going to make your current employer think, bloody hell, what's going on here? Then yeah, don't. But yeah, it's not mandated. What LinkedIn banner recommendations or suggestions do you have? Look, you don't need to go and create something like crazy. One thing to mention, if you haven't seen my banner, Do not do anything like that. It will essentially make you unemployable. If you look like you're using LinkedIn for like running a business or for client acquisition and whatnot, that is not what companies want to see. You're better off using like even just something that's got your name on it, or like the device skyline or something like that, or something really simple. The main thing is that it's high quality, that it's not sort of pixelated, and yeah, just keep it simple. Um, do me I think you mean, does the Middle East have in-person recruitment workshops for hiring workforce and networking? The Middle East, um, so when I mentioned at the start, like the Middle East, yeah, the Middle East is absolutely massive, right? So we're talking like Lebanon and stuff like that, and Syria and whatnot. Like if we're talking GCC, we run networking events. We run large scale networking events, and that actually brings me on to something that I'm going to mention at the end of this discussion. Um, but yeah, like there are things that you can attend. Yes, 100%. Is there any Are there any walk-ins in the UAE job market? If you're going to walk-in interviews, you are going to be paid little to nothing. You definitely don't want to go to walk-in interviews. I've even seen some people going to like walk-in interviews for like manager, senior manager grade positions. These companies are not like, you should never be going to walk-in interviews. They are terrible, absolutely terrible. Um, let's see. Could you provide info about the services you propose? We don't. So these events, I aim to keep these 100% free. These are not like upsell sessions or anything like that. We don't try not to do anything like that. If you want to ask me about anything like that, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help. Um, let's see what we've got here. Interesting question. You mentioned about spelling mistakes within the CV. What about proofing language? For example, some words in the UK dictionary are spelt differently to the US dictionary. Which proofing would you recommend to use in the UAE? So it doesn't matter if you use UK English or US English. Very good question. But make sure you stick to whatever you use. So if you use UK English, stick to UK English. Don't go spelling organization with an S and then with a Z later on in the CV. Just make sure you stick to one. Um, how to self-sponsor in the UAE, like cost and criteria. There are various ways to self-sponsor yourself in the UAE. If you want to do so, it's going to cost you around about anywhere between sort of 3 and 5 thousand US dollars for the year. Anywhere between about 10 to 20,000 dirham for the year. I would recommend contacting IFZA for anything related to visa stuff. They're usually pretty good. Can a company ask you to bear visa expenses? No, they cannot. If a company is asking you to pay for your visa, very often and more often than not, it is not legitimate. They're going to take your money and they don't exist. They're going to run away. What is your top tip for an effective LinkedIn headline? So your LinkedIn headline is one of the first things that people will see when they go to your profile behind like your profile picture. So when you're writing your LinkedIn headline, it needs to be that you've got like two short lines, right? Very short. You've got, a small select group of words there that you can utilize. Someone needs to know exactly what you do by looking at that. Whatever that might be that you do, someone should know exactly what you do. You don't want to fill it up with like, oh, X Google, X PwC, X Accenture, X Deloitte, X. You don't want to fill it up with all of that kind of stuff. You definitely don't want to be putting like hashtags in there. You don't want to chuck loads of certifications in there. If you've got a cert that you think is really important, you want to put it in there, put that in there. Don't put like your university stuff in there. Don't put anything like that. Make it so that someone knows exactly what you do, what you're looking for, and what value you can add by that very short sort of span of words. Um, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oh, when you apply via Easy Apply, does it make a difference if you have LinkedIn Premium? Yes, it does. LinkedIn Premium means that you are a paying customer of LinkedIn's. They are going to do everything they can to ensure that you continue paying. So yes, it will. Um, what have we got? What have we got? What have we got? Let's see. I'm just making sure that the question that I start answering, I'm able to like completely understand. Are posts created using ChatGPT helpful? No, they are not. Everyone knows their ChatGPT, and no one, people might even call you out for it. So it's definitely not beneficial. Is it beneficial to apply on reposted jobs? So when a job's been reposted, it can mean one of a few things. Main two are it's a fake job, doesn't actually exist, and they're just reposting it because it's engagement farming or whatever. Or it could be the case where they've been looking for 2 months for someone and they've still not found them. In which case, if you apply and reach out and assume that you know that is a legitimate position, then you may actually be finding a sort of diamond in the rough. So whilst yes, a lot of the roles that have been up for a long time might not be actively hiring, it might just be dormant. If you find one that is still hiring and they're genuinely struggling, you are almost guaranteed an interview if you play your cards correctly. Um, um, since you mentioned the resume should have no gap, what should one do when you start talking to a recruiter and you've mentioned no gap in the profile, but there actually is a gap? Would the recruiter not feel deceived and not want to take it forward? Maybe, but if you didn't close the gap, you never would have even had the chance to have the discussion. The idea here is you are here, you need to get here. There's no point in worrying about what's going to happen here if you're not going to get past here, if that makes sense. So you're here. First objective, get here. Once you're there, any challenges that come, then we can worry about that and get you here. Then once you're there, you worry about getting there. There's no point in worrying about what's going to happen at step 3 when you've not even managed to get to step 1 yet. Get to step 1. Once you are there, you can handle that challenge. There are so many things you could say. You could even say, hey, look, I listened to Zach and he advised me to do it. To throw me under the bus, right? There are so many different things that you can do to get out of this. And maybe if you don't handle it correctly, maybe the recruiter will feel deceived and think, oh, this person's a liar. I don't want to take it forward. Probably not, though. They probably won't. They'll probably understand exactly why you're doing it because they're also familiar with this market. They might have been in this call with you as well, right? There's, this isn't like some sort of fringe idea of just like, this is a really niche thing. This is pretty much standard practice over here if you want to land a job. So they're not going to be, super taken aback by it, especially once you've explained yourself. Let's see. Good question. So going back to salary, when we come up with our range, should we factor in a number for expat benefits, i.e. housing allowance and whatnot? What you would want to do is you'd want to play it by ear. So when you give a range, typically you're giving your kind of base plus housing. Because in the UAE, salary is broken up quite weird. Most of you'll be aware it's pretty weird how they break it up. It's kind of like the base salary, and it's like an X percentage on for housing, but really it's base. So like your salary will be, let's say you're on 50K, it will be 37K plus 13K housing, right? It's weird how it's done. It's done in a strange way, but that would be considered by most your base salary. That's typically what you'd give unless you had some sort of reason to give them more. So the default would be just give them that number, the base plus housing, but you wouldn't include like bonuses and whatnot or performance bonuses and stuff like this. When you're in latter discussions, then you can include that like OT and stuff like that. You can get into that, but you wouldn't at the initial stages, and you would wait until the time is right. It's clear when it's the right time for that. If someone says, what are you expecting? You wouldn't go into, oh, I'm looking for between 40 and 50. That breaks down to 13 housing allowance, and I want X bonus on top. I want X, Y, Z. You just go keep it basic. And then later on, when it's appropriate, when it's the time, that's when you discuss that. Most sort of senior positions or anything to some degree of seniority or experience will include additional benefits that would typically be discussed later on. Applying on LinkedIn versus directly on the company website, which is better? Always apply directly on the company website as a number one preference. That is where I'm going to call it, guys. But before I jump off, I just wanted to announce something that is the first time we have done something like this. And I'm hoping it's going to be extremely beneficial. I'm not talking about this session. Um, we are, and I am going to open up the doors to our office. And I want to invite as many of you in as possible to meet with me, meet with the team, ask us questions, meet with each other, and network amongst each other. Um, of course, we're not going to be able to bring 500,000 heads here to meet with us because we would probably go through the floor. But I do want to invite you all in to meet with us and to ask us any questions that you have in a networking, sort of have a coffee setting. I'm going to do it completely for free as well. So after this session, will LinkedIn suggest me more jobs in the UAE? Yes, maybe one session isn't going to be enough to see a massive difference, but yes, it will. But yeah, we're going to open up the doors to our office. We've actually got it arranged already. I'll announce this in our private network first. I'll announce this on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. We'll be able to have about 50 of you join us in our office in JVC in Dubai. So for anyone who would like to come in and join me and meet us and speak with the team and ask me any questions that you have face to face, in person, about landing a job, you're more than welcome to join us. What I would suggest is look out for the post that I put out probably tomorrow, talking about this and advising on the details and when and where and how. But as I said, it's going to be completely free. There will be no charge whatsoever. You'll be able to come in, ask us any questions. I believe we are doing this at 11 a.m. on a Friday, which is the 12th. So if you would like to join and you'd like to come in, have a coffee, meet me, just send me a DM, send me a message, and I'll send across an invitation. I'm not going to be able to invite absolutely everyone, and I'm sorry that I can't. I wish I could, but we just simply can't facilitate it. We'd be spilling out all over into the street. So, I will get that up, and I'll look forward to seeing you all there. And JVC is not all residential, but good point. But yeah, cheers, guys. I'll put that up tomorrow. If you want to join me, drop me a message. I'll give you the details. And thank you all for taking the time out to attend. I look forward to catching you in the next one. We'll be doing a large event outside of this event that we'll be doing on the 12th. This is like a sort of more personal networking session, but we'll be doing a huge large scale event coming into Q4 in which we will have a large portion of people attending from both companies who are hiring professionals looking for their next role, people who have already landed a job. We'll have absolutely everything going, and you will be able to meet us and other people in similar positions to yourself and people who are hiring. So, appreciate you all, guys. Wish you every success with your search, with your careers. If there's anything you need from me, pop me a message, and I will be more than happy to help. If I don't respond to you straight away, if I don't respond at all, it's not because I don't want to. It's not because I'm ignoring you. It would never be the case that that's what's occurring. It's simply because I receive a lot of messages on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. Well, not on YouTube, but on WhatsApp. I receive messages all over the shop. So if I do not respond to you, please just send me a nudge. It's not, you're not being rude and I'm not being rude. It's just that it slipped down my inbox. So have a good one, guys. Appreciate you all. And